Hello, everybody, and welcome to this free webinar. Tonight, we're really excited that you're joining us. This webinar is a collaboration between the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network and the ISTE STEM PLN. We're really excited for this collaboration, and we have some really great content, some great conversations coming your way tonight. Before we get going with our presenters, chair of our ISTE Inclusive Learning Network. And so I try to arrange some of these free webinars to bring you the latest in inclusive learning and technology integration for diverse learners. So we want to hear first from both of our presidents, first from the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network. Here is Susie Gronseth. Susie, say hello.
Hi, I'm Susie Gronseth, and I'm coming to you from Houston, Texas tonight. And I'm really excited about our webinar. We, as the Inclusive Learning Network, are very interested in how we can reduce barriers for all learners. And we look at a variety of content areas, and we're focusing on STEM tonight. And we wanted to focus actually on STEM this whole year, culminating in a hands-on playground at the ISTE 2017 conference. So I'm looking forward to getting some ideas to use in the playground and hopefully in some other sessions that we proposed. But we did hear that we are going to have the playground this summer. So I'm grateful for the STEM PLN for collaborating with us, and I look forward to doing more cross PLN kinds of activities like this. So go ahead, Julianne.
Hi everyone, I'm Julianne, and I am welcoming you to our new home. Literally, we just moved in here on Friday. We are in Hamden, Connecticut. And a little about the ISTE STEM Learning Network. We were originally the Science and Math Network, as you can see. And then in September 2015, we changed it over to STEM so we can include technology and engineering. We're so happy to be collaborating with the Inclusion Learning Network, as we want to make sure that everybody recognizes that STEM is not just technology, but it's a wide range of different tools and apps, and there are a lot of ways that they are accessible for so many different students. I know Carrie is going to talk to you about coding, but just to even think as a computational thinker, there are a lot of activities that are not online, but are unplugged. So there are many different ways that you can reach out to incorporate STEM into your curriculum. We are also excited because we will be having a playground in ISTE 2017 as well. So we look forward to speaking to those of you who are participating tonight again and again and again. And I'm going to turn it over to Luis.
Excellent. Well, that was a great welcome from the two of you. And before we get going, just a couple of logistics. The way this tool works, Zoom, if you've never used it before, I'm on a computer right now. This may look a little bit different if you're on a mobile device. But as you hover on the computer on the lower part of the screen, you'll see the controls kind of come up. And one of the controls is mute. So what we ask is that if you're not one of the speakers at a given time, go ahead and mute yourself. So that way we don't hear any stray sounds or any feedback in the background that could be distracting. And then also there is a chat area. So the same area where you'll find some of the audio and video controls, you'll see a chat button. And if you tap that button, it will bring up a list. You'll see all the different comments that people are making. So this is a great way to interact. And just to make sure that you can interact, I'm going to ask you a quick question. And then you can answer it in the chat area. What is your favorite 1980s movie? So I'm going to give you a minute to go into the chat area. And let's see what your favorite 1980s movie. So I'm just doing this out of my own needs so that I can build up a list of movies to watch over the holidays. When there's just too much college football on TV, then I can turn to your list here. So let's see. Pretty in Pink. Really cool. Yeah. Actually, 16 Candles. Oh, so many great movies. E.T. E.T., of course. St. Elmo's Fire. That's on my list to watch during this holiday. Excellent. So keep those coming. I just want to make sure that you could find the chat area because I'm going to be monitoring that area. So if you have any questions at any point, go ahead and post it there and I'll keep an eye on it. So with that, those logistics and those welcoming remarks out of the way, let's turn to our content for tonight. So first up is Carrie Killian. She's a certified library media specialist for elementary schools in the Milton Area School District in Pennsylvania. So welcome, Carrie. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's so exciting to be here with a wonderful group of people, and those listening, I consider them experts because they're here on their own time to listen to this webinar. So feel free to chat and share ideas that work for you or don't work for you. If there's something I talk about that you tried and it doesn't work, let us know that so we can work as a team.
So Carrie, tell us a little bit about what you do in your environment. What is your role right now?
My role is a library media specialist, and I work at 3 elementary schools, kindergarten through 5th grade. I have about 900 students that I see on a 12-day cycle. So I keep pretty busy.
Excellent. So before we kind of came on here formally, we were having a discussion prior to the start of the webinar. Can you share with me 2 or 3 tools that you found to be highly engaging to your learners as you explore STEM? But even before we get to that, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So you personally, how do you define STEM?
STEM, I define STEM as activities that include science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. If they can include as many of those as possible in an activity, those are my favorite ones. Instead of just individual pieces, when it's a whole, that's when it's the best.
Absolutely. So the whole is more important than the pieces, right? In a way. Those of you that are in the chat area, how do you define STEM? What is your personal definition of STEM? Or some people call it STEAM. I've seen many variations of this. So STEM, STEAM, how do you define that? And then while you do that, why don't you, Carrie, share some of the tools that you're using right now?
All right. And another part of STEAM, I like to throw the R in there and get the robotics in there. So in the library classes, we have some Ollie robots. And for the hour of code, we take just playing with Ollies a step further. There's a Spark Lab app that they really have to learn to start adding code to make it do what you really want it to do. And that really is quite challenging for the students. So I'm just going to show you real quickly on my iPad. The students have these apps on their iPads. There's Scratch Junior, Hopscotch, Tinker, Lightbot, and Codable, and the lab that I talked about. Those are all some that the students have the option to try. I try to do it Daisy the Dino and Codable with my kindergarten first graders just to get them idea that coding is just starting to drag over some commands and then pushing play or run to see if it will actually do what you want it to do. So I do that, but I also like the activities that have students develop their creativity and get some hands-on learning. So while I was at ISTE last year, I heard about something called Bloxels, and that's been my new favorite that the students have really taken to. And I think my latest tweet about this one was a picture of 3rd graders that created an amazing character, and I said, grade 3, better than me. They just did it so quickly, and I'm like, how do you guys do that? But they do so well. Let me show you. This is the Bloxels. So that's the one that I'm talking about, and it comes with a whole bunch of little 1 centimeter cubes that students put in a tray, and then they capture that picture with their iPad, and now using the characters that they made or the background that they made, they use it in the video game that they're going to play. So being a librarian that I purchased just one of these just to see if it works. So I have a whole class with one. So I see kids collaborating together, working together. I didn't get a chance to try it, but can I take a picture of your character and play my game with it? The students are so good about working together and sharing and getting ideas together, but I just saw creativity flourish with this one. And I just love that. They were now not just playing games, they are now creating their own games. And these are, 2nd graders, 3rd graders, 4th and 5th graders. So just to get them starting to feel like I'm a creator. I can make things. That's great.
Absolutely, is taking that next step, and rather than just consuming the content, they're going out and creating it. Are there some activities before you look at the apps and the different digital tools? Are there some unplugged activities that you do with your students that are kind of a precursor to what you're doing with your devices and your technology?
Yeah, at the beginning of the school year, I introduced the maker spaces, and the maker spaces is an attitude. So that's the attitude that we all work together. There's no negative attitudes allowed, and it's about designing and learning something new and not giving up when it doesn't work for you. And all students, they just really take to this because it's one time in their schooling when they're seen as someone that maybe they're not so good at taking those paper pencil tests, but they can build something and create something. And you'll see teams of students come together that normally don't spend time together. It really does tear down walls that sometimes we create because students are interested in this activity. They go over there no matter who's over there. And some that you don't think are leaders will just step up and take a leadership role. It's just truly amazing seeing how makerspaces and just accepting that as a way of thinking has changed the way students act when they come to library class. What are we going to make today? What will we get to do? I've had students say, I just don't know what I'm going to do today. I can't do anything. And I'll just put something in front and said, there's some directions in there and here's some materials. Just see what you can do. And like by the end of a 40-minute class period, I have these little pipe cleaner fuzzy critters, and a kid with a huge smile on his face saying, look what I made for you. So like just in that short amount of time where they can feel successful, I think is extremely important for these students.
And I think something very important that you mentioned is those relationships that are built as the students engage in these collaborative activities, which is so important for those learners that are not always included, socially. Yeah. And so now we're giving them an opportunity to collaborate and to create together. So you've talked about some of the positives and that this is an attitude.
Yeah.
If you had to say, what has been the biggest challenge in implementing some of these technologies in your classroom?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that I have 3 libraries, so I have to purchase 3 of everything. And, some of that comes out of my own pocket. So that's one of the hardest. I can honestly say I thought one of the biggest challenges would be that teachers would walk by the libraries and see the kids just having like an open recess time, but they don't. The kids see the teachers come in to pick their students up from library class and say, these are the things that we want to do with our classrooms, but we just don't have time. So they're seeing how the learning is going beyond, just something simple that they're writing on paper. So they've been truly supportive, and my administrator have been very supportive because they see the excitement that students have for learning. So, yeah.
Excellent. So as we come to the end of your segment here, you showed a number of apps on the iPad.
Yeah.
You mentioned Lightbot, Scratch Junior. Of those, if you were thinking about being inclusive in teaching these concepts, which one would you pick if you had to pick one for our audience to look at over the break?
If I had to select one, it would be my new favorite, which is Bloxels.
Well, aside from Bloxels, because we know you love Bloxels.
Well, and I've been telling the kids it's cheaper on Amazon than at Walmart by $20. But that one and another one that's one of my favorites is Lightbot. I can pull that up on the smart board and have students working on that together, and they just crowd around, and whatever they're doing, they just work well together on that one. That's for the older ones. I'd pick Codable for the younger ones.
Okay, I'm just listing these in the chat area. So Lightbox, and then Codable for some of the older students.
Codable for the younger ones.
For the younger ones, sorry, I had it reversed there.
Yeah, it's okay.
No problem. Let's see, I'm just going to go through and see if there are some questions here, if you don't mind. It's kind of tough to keep up with the chat sometimes. Somebody mentioned if you've heard about MAD, M-A-D, Learn. It's a mobile app development I guess it's an environment for students. So that's something that somebody suggested in the chat area that may be worth checking out.
Yeah.
Let's see, I'm waiting. Somebody says they have a question here. Go ahead and just type that into the chat area, and I'll be happy to pass that along to Carrie. But if not, we will have some time after we get through our speakers, again, to do an open share. So we always believe that the room is probably the smartest person here, the room as the collective. So we will go ahead and do an open share at the end, and then do some also some Q&A.
Great.
Thanks so much, Carrie. That was great. Thanks for sharing what you're doing in your library environment.
Great, thanks.
All right, so you can go ahead and mute yourself. All right, so next up we have Stephen Jones. Stephen Jones is the STEAM facilitator in District 96. That's just west of Chicago. Welcome, Stephen. Great to have you with us tonight. Can you start by just telling us a little bit about what you're doing in your district and what your current role is?
Sure. I am the STEAM facilitator in my district, and basically I work with 6th through 8th grade. And my class is like an encore class or a specialty class. So it's part of the regular school day. Students pick it as an elective, and I basically have 3 different components to it. One is based on IMSA, which is the Illinois Math and Science Academy. So they provide curriculum for schools in the state to use. So basically I'm doing a aviation class, or learning about everything about airlines, air traffic control, environmental aspects, engineering design, everything as it applies to aviation for 6th grade. For 7th grade, we have a material science class. So we're learning all about the properties of different materials, plastics, woods, metals, etc. And then we have the other component, which is the curriculum that I created. Basically, that is a STEAM design class and an entrepreneurial class. So for 6th and 7th grade, students learn about the engineering design process. They also learn about 3D modeling and printing, and they learn about circuits and some basic programming. And then with 8th grade, they also have an option of taking an entrepreneurial class. So they learn about different professions, such as design engineers, industrial designers, graphic designers, attorneys, project managers, accountants. They basically form a company. They create a design company. They go through all the processes that a regular company would go through. And right now we're currently in the process of designing signs for our district. So each company or team has to interview administration in each building, and they have to kind of go through the design process, use empathy, try to see things from their perspective, and then work back and forth with them to basically create these designs that they need.
Oh, I love that. That really warms my heart, because a lot of times when we think about STEM, we think about it sort of somewhat kind of narrowly. And I love what you're doing, because you're bringing design thinking into it. You're bringing entrepreneurship, so that they're seeing that STEM is just part of a larger movement to try to solve these big problems and really, you know, engage them and bring in the creativity and so on. So I think what you're doing is wonderful there. And everybody in the chat area agrees. You're getting lots of messages. Cool, love it. That's wonderful, Stephen. So send Stephen some love in the chat area. But I know you're going to share some resources with us by sharing your screen. So if you want to go ahead and do that, then I will sit back and let you share away.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so I want to talk mostly about 3D modeling and vector images. So with 3D modeling, the easiest way to introduce this to students of all different levels, even below 6th grade, which is what I currently teach. I used to teach kindergarten through 8th grade, so I have experience using this with younger students as well. But I used to teach a free program called Blender, which is open source, it's free, but I found it to be a bit too difficult for most students to start off with. I have experience doing 3D modeling for a long time, and it was a great tool in terms of flexibility, but in terms of making it accessible, I found that another program is way better for students to start learning about 3D. So that program is Tinkercad. And basically, you have a basic work plane. You have a series of geometric primitives, which you can drag onto a viewport. You can use a touchpad, or you can use a mouse. The basic idea is you combine different shapes or take away shapes, and we call that Boolean addition or Boolean subtraction to make objects. And then you can basically export these out to Minecraft, or you can export them out to a store to get your own 3D modeling. Or if you happen to have your own 3D printer in your classroom, then you can print your own 3D models. The really nice thing about it is that Tinkercad has a lot of really good basic tutorials built in. And then from a teacher perspective, you can use Project Ignite, which is basically like a tutorial-driven site that Autodesk basically oversees, but they create content and they allow educators to add their own content to basically walk students through creating different projects. And the nice thing about it is that it uses Tinkercad, but on the left-hand side, it has the tutorials, and in the center part where it has Tinkercad, it also has like little orange hints that kind of shows students where to drag the objects to, which I think is really nice. Another aspect about this is that you can import in vector images. So kind of bring in more of that art element. Students can create images in Google Drawing, for example. Pop over here really quick. And after they create something, I'll just use a simple curve here. You go back to the original spot. Now it fills in the shape. Now you can go to File. You can download as an SVG or Scalable Vector Graphics object. Once you export that out, go ahead and just do that really quick. Then you can actually bring that into Tinkercad. And the same thing with an application called Inkscape, which I've been using for a while. Now, all these applications are free to use. I know a lot of schools use Google Apps for Education, so that would be a really easy way to use Google Drawing. It also works on Chromebooks, of course. If you don't have access to desktops, or you don't use like Windows or Macs at your school, then I will go Google Drawing. But if you do have a Windows or Mac, whether it's a lab or a cart or a computer lab, I recommend trying out Inkscape. And this is kind of the interface for this. It looks a little bit more intimidating than it really is. But the way I kind of teach students is they can use primitive shapes here, or they can basically sketch out their own objects. And the nice thing about this is that it also allows you to bring in reference images. So for students who like to draw their own objects, or they take photos of references, they can basically bring that in as its own layer, kind of like in Photoshop. And then they can use it as a reference for building things. And just like with Google Drawing, students can export it out as a SVG and then bring that into Tinkercad. So I'll go ahead and just pop back over to my browser. I just want to show you one more application. This applies more if your students are into, I would say, carving. So basically, I teach students about additive manufacturing and subtractive manufacturing. So 3D printing is an additive process, right, where you build up objects layer by layer. And subtractive manufacturing is the exact opposite. So I tell students, think of it as you're taking a block of material and then you're cutting away from that. So a program that's free to use that with is called Easel. And I'll go ahead and show you what the interface looks like. I'll show you some work I've kind of showed students, some student work, and then I'll just show you some models that students have created, both using carving and using 3D printing. So let's see if I can get this to show up. Okay. All right, so I have a co-curricular or an after-school program as well, and the student wanted to create pentominoes. I personally had never heard of it, but basically, I guess it's like it's a little block games. So the student basically found an image online. She brought that into Inkscape. She traced that over and made a few adjustments, and then brought that into easel. And then we actually took it to our CNC machine, which is called the Carvey, and then it actually carved this out. So the student was able to kind of take that home. We were able to sort of talk with other students about the process and how she created it. Another thing, let me see, this window keeps popping up at the top. Okay. In order to kind of introduce students to the sign making process, basically I took a quick example using our school's logo. We have the Cougars. So I basically used Inkscape again as a reference point for creating this shape here. And the way it works in shades of dark to light. So the areas that are white aren't going to be carved, and the areas that are dark will be carved deeper into the material. So anything you have in between will be kind of midway through the material. It's pretty straightforward. You can pick pre-made shapes, or just like with the other programs like Google Drawing or with Inkscape, you can create your own shapes using the tools that are available. You can also import your own images, and then you can add text in. And then it's pretty easy for carving. You just put in the dimensions of your material, how thick it is. You can choose from a preset of materials here. And then you plug it into your machine, and then you press carve, and then it does everything for you. I mean, it really is it's pretty easy, and the students feel really empowered by not having to think too much about the process. Okay, and I'll just go ahead and show you a little bit of student work, and I'll just kind of wrap things up, and I'll just sort of talk you through a few things that we have. All right. Okay. All right, so this is an example of a 3D print. In this case, the student used geometric primitives, so like half cylinders, spheres. Basically, they just put it all together based on a drawing they did. And we talked about doing conversions between inches and centimeters and millimeters, because a lot of students, at least here in the US, at this age, they don't have a good idea of what measurements really look like. And since we obviously primarily focus on like inches and feet, I try to tell students that in a lot of these 3D programs, everything is done by, millimeters. So we're trying to basically get them to convert over without using Google to quickly come up with the answer, and also teaching them kind of tying in more math. I teach them about 3D printing and the temperatures that you have to utilize for like a heating bed and to melt different kind of filaments. So we talk about material science and the properties of different filaments, the temperature they need to melt at, the physical properties, how rigid they are, how much they can bend. And then I always have them convert from centimeters to Fahrenheit on the fly without using pencil and paper, without using a calculator. So I'll just kind of quickly go through a few more things. I've been doing these cardboard boat challenges, part of the James Dyson Foundation. If you see some of these things on here, I have these pretty cool videos the students have been doing. This is an example of a 3D print that was initially designed on pencil and paper. Then the student tried in Google Drawing, and they made a better version in Inkscape, and then finally they brought it over to easel. So basically we have a carve and we have a 3D print of this particular object. Okay. The 3D model. This is an example of basically using foam core, using easel to carve that out. For student, there's one student that I have that's a big Cubs fan, so he used Google Drawing to design his little Cubs sign using material called it's called HDPE, which is a kind of plastic. Even though I'm not going to talk about it, we use a lot of little bits as well. And this is that same design here that I showed you from a 3D print. This is using the CNC machine. So it was a two-color material, black and yellow. After they carved a certain amount into the black material, it revealed the yellow. And I'll go just over a little bit more. We did some prototyping with cardboard here. This is when we're creating the bathroom signs. So you can kind of see the video really quick. And then the students ended up making signs. I think I have it on here. Even though it's not officially the way you make Braille, they basically made Braille bathroom signs for our school. And these are some of the designs that they were initially showing the principal in terms of potential designs to use. And then I basically also had them use Google Drawing to basically create an imitation of what the website will look like. The company that makes the CNC machine is called Inventables, and they basically have a website that allows students to kind of view projects that professionals have made, and they basically share the files, and you can see them, see how everything was made, and often they make video tutorials as well. So I taught 8th graders to do the same process, and I actually had one team actually upload their tutorial to the Inventables website. So people can actually look at theirs and download their files to actually recreate the files that they did.
Well, lots of really great student work that you're creating. And I love that last idea of the Braille signs, because it's such a great way to bring out that universal design, that idea of universal design, because that's something that most of us probably take for granted. But if you can't see, and something as simple as finding the bathroom, make sure you're in the correct bathroom, we can introduce those real world problems and get our students to think about how you go about solving them. So since it's halftime, this is like a football game, it's halftime. So I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to take a look at some of the questions, and I'm going to throw these out at both you, Carrie, and Stephen. So Carrie, if you want to unmute yourself, this is for both of you. These are some of the top questions that came through. Number one, this is probably for you, Stephen, but in terms of a cost-effective 3D printer, what would you recommend? What would be a top one that you've seen or that you've worked with?
In terms of cost-effective, I know they're still kind of expensive. I guess the biggest issue is, from a school standpoint, you want something that's going to be relatively easy to use, and it's going to have good technical support and low downtime. One of the big differences between the cheaper 3D printers that are like $300 and up to the ones that are $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 is going to be like the extruder, and how often they basically clog up, which can cause a lot of problems, and then the actual dimensions that they can print. The ones that I've had a little bit of experience with are the Ultimaker, the Type A machines, Series 1 Pro, and then they have various MakerBots that I think that are pretty good, and they offer a wider range of prices for those. For a school, I wouldn't recommend one of the $300-$400 models. I think to get a good one for the school that's going to be manageable, you're probably going to spend at least $1,000 or $2,000.
Right. We're looking at something that's going to be durable enough where you're going to get a long lifespan out of it. You're not going to have to keep replacing it, because if you get something that's $300-$400 and you have to replace it a few times, then basically at around the same point anyway. Another question that came in has to do with how do you, let me see if I can find that question again, has to do with choice, which is those of you that are familiar with UDL, Universal Design for Learning, know that choice is a big component of the UDL classroom. And we provide choice in a variety of different areas, from how to access the print materials to what setting works best for you in terms of working individually or as a group, to how you show your learning. So how do you go about letting students choose some of these tools, and in terms of the projects? What is your process for that? And this goes to both of you.
Carrie, did you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. I replied on the chat. For example, when I teach a new concept, like this last cycle is Hour of Code, so I really want the students to spend a little time on coding or computer sciences. So for that, I do a quick introduction, and I'll introduce one or two new things, and most students want to try them. But I give them the option that they can do any of the activities that are the coding activities. So I introduce something new, but then I also give them the opportunity to try the other things as well if they want to. So I can be flexible like that, and it works well because the kid 90% of the time they do the new thing that I show them. So to try it out.
Yes, I found that out when I was working with pre-service teachers, that if I showed one example, then at the end of the semester, when it was time to grade, I would get 100 of the one example. So it's something to keep in mind, that show a variety of examples, and because that shows the learners that there's a variety of ways that you can accomplish the goal. How about you, Stephen? What's your input on that question?
Well, basically what I normally do, we have like a pre-assessment at the beginning of the trimester. I normally see students 12 weeks at a time. And this allows me to kind of get an idea of what they're interested in. And well, technically we have the pre-assessment, which kind of gets an idea of what they know. And then I have kind of like a learner profile survey, which is more about their interest. So basically kind of taking those two in mind, I kind of present the students a few different options. But I like to present everyone. Most of them don't really have much background or no background in any of the things that I present. So the idea is to use the first half of the trimester, so the first 6 weeks, to kind of introduce two or three different things. So in this case, it's normally like the 3D modeling and printing, and then circuits either with the Little Bits or Arduino Uno or the Raspberry Pi. And then the second half of the trimester, they're able to kind of pick which one they want to focus on for the second half.
Excellent.
So that's kind of the basic idea.
Yep, and I like the idea, what you mentioned. Again, I'm going to, because we're the Inclusive Learning Network, I'm going to bring it back to UDL and how you look at their interests, right? And try to use that as a foundation for so some of the projects that they're going to be doing. So I like what you showed with that student who liked the Cubs, and how you use that idea of him liking the Cubs to teach him some of the concepts that you're covering in the class. Am I correct that that's what happened?
Yes.
One last question for halftime, and then we're going to turn it over to our next presenter. Had to do with age. Some of these online accounts, some of these things require, here it is. How do you get around the fact that some of the students may be under the age of 13? This may not be so much of an issue for you, Stephen, but definitely for Carrie in some cases.
Well, it does apply to us as well. 8th grade, not really, but 6th and 7th, it's definitely a big deal, and our district is very strict about that. And basically, our tech director basically created these forms, a COPA form, and we basically, for everything that requires making an online account, we have to get a copy of that form. We add the websites, and we call it the web operator, and then we basically send that out to the parents. Without getting that permission, we basically don't allow them to use those websites. I know he uses some sort of software to, I guess, validate how safe those individual websites are and how they manage student data. If they meet the standards, he'll allow you to basically send this form out to the parents for them to approve. If it doesn't meet the district standards, then we have to find another tool for them to use. We're trying to make this a little bit easier. We started it this year, but ideally we would start at the beginning of the school year. Trying to chase down students for papers to have them sign is a little tedious. So we've been kind of doing like a blanket document that has a list of websites or applications on there. And then we're getting parents to generally agree, saying that if the website is on this form, you are giving us consent to act basically as a guardian on your behalf to basically approve and supervise the usage of these websites. So the idea is to, at the beginning of the year with 6th and 7th grade, to get parents to basically agree to this, and then if they object, and the individual teacher has to find something else for that particular student. But so far, it really hasn't been an issue. Like I said, just the only thing that's been a little bit of a hang up is just trying to get students to take those forms home and get their parents to sign them and then bring them back in one piece.
Got you. Carrie, you want to real quick answer that question, and then we'll go to the halftime. The band is getting off the field. We're about to get into the third and fourth quarter here. So,
all right, just real quickly, just from my perspective, I see students for about 40 minutes, about once every 2 weeks. So I don't have much of a consecutive time that I have with them. So the time that I do have, I'm looking for applications that don't require student login or student information, because I have to create 900 of those. But I'll look for things like Nearpod, where the students can each participate individually and all they need to do is put the code in. So things like that for the younger students work very well for me and for other teachers, where I don't have to put the accounts in and get that approval, because I do understand that is a tedious process and it's in somebody else's hands. And if you find something last minute, well, yeah. So that's what I look for.
Great advice. 900 of those forms would be difficult every time. All right, so halftime's over, and we're going to turn it over to our last presenter of the evening. And so, Julie, I'll let you take over the screen. Julie is coming to us from Connecticut. She is the lower school technology coordinator at the Foot School. So, Julie, are you still with us?
I'm still with you, and I'm laughing because all of my links closed.
Okay.
So if you give me a moment, I'm going to see what I can do very quickly.
While you do that, I'll just let everybody know that we are recording this. And so I'm going to share, if you signed up for the webinar through our web form, you will get an email with a link to the recording. But if not, you can go to our Inclusive Learning page, inclusiveln.org. I will go ahead and type that into the chat area. And then just look for the professional learning page, and you'll see a link to the recording. What's great about that is you can replay it as many times as you need to. Also, I'm going to ask our presenters to just kind of put together a list of some of the things that you mentioned, and we'll put that put those links right below the recording so that you can visit some of these things and check them out on your own time and see how much they cost, because the prices change. Sometimes there's sales, especially around the holidays. So we'll go ahead and do that. So here's the link over in the chat area. You can bookmark that and come back to the recording later. How we doing, Julie?
You're fantastic. You're so great at just moving everything along. So while you did that in the background, I was bringing up all of my websites again. And I think, I'm having an issue. So I'm going to try this one more time.
Is it sharing your screen that's being an issue, or?
No, it seems like things are closing out, and I don't know. Like I said, we just moved, and I'm wondering if I'm just having a little internet issue.
Well, I know you had mentioned, if you want, we can just go ahead and while you try to bring that up, we can talk about some of the resources you had mentioned.
Yep.
We can also use the chat area, so you can write in the chat area some of the names of those tools. And also you had a document, right, that you wanted to share with us?
I do. Let's see if this works, actually. So I do have, we have something, and we're just going to roll along as best as we can. I wanted to share with everyone that before we left for the evening, and I'm going to kind of mute my, no, we'll just do it there. I wanted to share with everyone before we left for the evening that STEM has some wonderful resources. 2 years ago, we did a webinar series, STEM on a Shoestring. So you would be able to find that, and yes, we'll make sure that you have access to this Google document that I have so that you can reach out to all these different pages. Another thing that we did last year is at the ISTE conference, we did a STEM on a shoestring workshop. So that was an extension of our webinar. And at the bottom, we have a digital resources tote resources. You'll find a lot of great ideas in here. There are handouts from the workshop. There are lesson plans from the workshop. There are suggestions for different videos that you can show in your classroom. There's the creative computing guide from MIT Media Lab on how you can use Scratch. A couple other things I want to show you before I showed you my tools that I enjoy using. We also, last year, had a playground. I hope you're still seeing my screen.
No, we lost your screen, so go ahead and share it again.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go.
There we go. STEM playground, a new way of thinking. So again, we had wonderful presenters, and they left us with an abundance of resources. It might seem a little overwhelming, so we invite you to please contact us, any of us who are presenting today, and we're happy to walk you through any of them. And the other thing I want to share with you is my website. On my website, I have a lot of different things that can show you things that my students have been doing, but I do have a STEM page. The STEM page walks you through a lot of the activities that I do with my students throughout the year. Third grade, I co-teach STEM with our middle school science teacher. We do introduce the students to the words separately and a definition of what is science, technology, engineering, and math. But each activity that we do with our students really leads up to a culminating activity, or even our math lesson is a culminating activity where they're making mint mobiles, and they have to budget, they have to design, they have to actually test them out on a ramp. So there's measuring, there's math, there's the engineering design process of testing. And then underneath I have some STEM resources, a lot of different websites that I've used, a lot of different apps that I've used, and again, videos and information. But the three things that I wanted to share with you today are, so towards the end of the year with my students, I like to publish. And so I call it publishing time. And I do this with all of my students, grades K through 5. Their publishing is just in different forms. 5th grade is really citing sources and doing internet research and research that does not involve the internet. But some different things that I've done with students, and this was with kindergarten students. Yes, it opened, yay. We used Tour Builder. For incoming kindergarten students, we wanted them to know about the places that were our favorites on the Foots campus. So I went around with students and we took pictures of their favorite places, and then they typed or helped me type in a little something about their favorite place. You could also add audio or video to this tool, so that's why I really enjoy this tool, and I feel like it's accessible to different people. The other, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of going around on my website. Let's see if I can get rid of some things here. A lot of stuff open. One more thing. Here we go. The other tool that I wanted to share with you, and it's not a new tool.
We lost your screen again.
We lost my screen again.
You may have clicked too many times.
I am the worst tech teacher, right? The other tool that I wanted to share with you is not a new tool, but it's something that I enjoy using with my students. It's Telegami. And this is Telegami EDU. I'll play this for you a little bit. Let's hope it's still sharing.
I'm sorry. I must have been asleep. Let me introduce myself. I'm Emma. Let me tell you about endangered species. It is a mother tiger, orangutan, blue whales, black pandas, rhinos, turtles, snow-bird-eating cranes, and whooping cranes.
Yes, you can hear the class in the background. Emma wanted to keep it just as is, but Telegami is a wonderful application. It's an app that students can use to make an avatar. The avatars, and I let the students know it's never going to look exactly like you, and that's fine. And it even doesn't have to look like you. You can adjust it any way you like. Sometimes students who are quiet find that this is a great way to have a voice. They can either type in information and then the computer will talk back in computerese, or as you heard, they can use their own voice. So Emma used this to do some basic internet research on endangered species, and then she put out a telegami for us. You can also change the background. You can use your own photos for background, or you can use the photos that are there. And I like the EDU version best. And the last app that I wanted to share with you is Bill Atkins Photo Card. Bill Atkins Photo Card is also an app. It's free. I think it's wonderful because Bill Atkinson, sorry, I apologize. Bill Atkinson is a photographer, and he has these beautiful nature pictures. So I've used his photo card app in a couple of different ways. The picture that you're looking at right now this was a lesson. Students in first grade and second grade flew to Africa and then did a whole unit on a study in Africa. So they went through the writing process to write letters to their family to explain about a part of their trip. And instead of using the beautiful pictures that Bill Atkinson had, they made their own pictures, because you're allowed to upload your own pictures. You could use them for the stamps, or you can use them for the postcard itself. And students did that. We printed them out, and then we actually mailed them. But as I said, you can use the photos that are there, and there are beautiful photos that he has. Another way that I used it is we just looked at the photos that Bill Atkinson had and had the students do I wonder statements. So we did a lesson using Google Earth, and they would pretend that they landed at the place that the photo was taken, because on the back on the photo it explains where the photo was taken. And then they had I wonder statements. Dear Mom, I flew to this place. I wonder, about the climate. I wonder. So those are a couple of different apps. The last thing I just wanted to share with you, I think I unshared my screen one last time. And let me just bring this down and bring this over. Books. I love books. I always read to my students to get started with different lessons. So here are some of the books that I really enjoyed using. Ada Twist, Iggy Peck, and Rosie Revere are from the same author. Ada Twist is actually new. Boy and Bot is a great way to introduce students to digital citizenship and just how to take care of technology and how technology takes care of us. The Dot and Ish are great for thinking creatively, as well as The Magnificent Thing. And The Doorbell Rang is a great book for discussing math. And I do see one of the other things I had up here that I also use for publishing. And this goes back to something someone said before. I introduce students to a lot of different tools throughout the first semester of the year. And then towards the end of the semester, that's when you get to choose what tool do you want to use. Is it, and I have, maybe you want to use Scratch Junior to publish. Maybe you want to use KidPix 3D, which you would have to purchase a CD and then install on computers. Maybe you want to do a haiku, because maybe you don't want to do a big story. So there are different things that we use, different tools that I share with the students at the beginning of the year, and then they decide which tools that they want to use for publishing towards the end of the year. And that's all I was going to share with you.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing those wonderful tools. And I think what we get from tonight is that there's such a wide-ranging set of tools that we can pick from. And I like what you said, or the way that both you and Stephen have it set up, where you first expose the students over a few weeks to a range of these tools, and then they can make an informed choice once they know some of the capabilities of these tools and how they work, they can then decide how they fit into, what their interests are and so on. So that's I think a great takeaway, a great way to approach this. As a STEM newbie that I am, I will take that with me. Let's see, we have about 5 minutes left, so we're doing great on time. Let's see if there are any other questions that those of you that are still with us want to ask. Go to the chat area and feel free to post your question. Also, I want to ask you kind of to prime the pump here. Of the tools that you've seen tonight, what's one new tool that you learned about that you're going to try, and what are you thinking about doing with that tool? So go ahead and just type it in the chat area, and I'll read a few of those out loud, or if you have questions. Again, we're going to be recording. Well, we are recording. We're not going to record it after the fact. We're recording it right now, and we're going to post the recording is what I meant to say. It's a little bit late in the day. So we're going to post the recording on our Inclusive Learning Network webpage, and then as many resources as I can collect from the session, then we'll post them over below the recording. We have a question here. Project Lead the Way. Anybody have any experience with that? Any of you presenters?
I don't have experience, but I have heard about it before.
Yeah, what have you heard so far?
I think it's similar to another, I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's where a project or a problem is given, and you have a collective amount of time to come up with a solution for this. But I could be wrong. I'm not sure.
Well,
that was really helpful, wasn't it? Thank you. Sorry.
Well, Val, do you want to share what Project Lead the Way is? Or if you have a link, go ahead and post that in the chat area, and then people can follow that. There we go.
There we go.
I think someone share, it's pltw.org. So maybe something worth checking out over the break, because that's what we want to do, is give you a chance not only to drink a lot of eggnog and eat a lot of cake and whatever you do during the holidays, but also go home and try out a few new tools and get kind of refreshed, and come back in January and just, hit the ground running with STEM in your classrooms. Let's see what we have here. Pinterest, yes. Carrie just suggested Pinterest. It's not just for how to dress up your pets or how to cook really yummy food, but there are a lot of teachers on Pinterest that are sharing lots of lesson ideas, lots of different tools that they come across. So definitely a great suggestion. Don't forget about Pinterest and of course Twitter. And you can follow the Inclusive Learning Network and the STEM PLN on Twitter. And I bet all the presenters tonight, as well as all the other members in these networks, are always sharing some great resources there. And there we go, at Inclusive LN for the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network, and at ISTE STEM, I think it is. I think we got a couple of letters crossed up there, but at ISTE STEM is for the STEM PLN. So you can follow them and get lots of great resources there. So let's see, any last minute questions? Kendra, who's a member of our network, she's just shared her Twitter handle. She's a great resource for computational thinking and among other things, UDL as well. I've learned a lot from their Twitter handles. Make sure you follow everybody that you see there, because that's a great way to learn, is by picking up, building a personal learning network. Around yourself. All right, so any last thoughts, anybody? Any of our presenters? Last thoughts for the cause here before we call it a night?
Okay, one last thought. You always hear lots of great ideas. Don't go home and try every one of these. You'll totally burn yourself out. Just try to pick one or two, and then pick up on the other ones later.
That is great advice. Make sure you do enjoy some time with your family as well over the break. We want you to come back refreshed in January. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Thank you.